Welcome back. So, 2 videos, one day. We did the Irish soda bread. It's been cooling on the counter. What we're going to do now is cut this up into little cubes or decent enough size pieces of bread. And we're going to use this to make a bread pudding. So our bread has been cooling on the counter. I cut it in half to help the cooling process. So now what we're gonna do, I don't know if you guys can hear how nice and crusty it came out. What we're gonna do is cut into that. We're gonna get that proportioned into sections. And now what we're gonna do with this is we're gonna cut this into little cube sections. So I'm just gonna start breaking it down as best as I can into little, almost loaf pieces. I recommend a bread knife for this, but watch your hands with whatever knife that you do use. So we're just gonna start to slowly break this down so we can get cubed pieces out of this. The reason why we do it with cubes is that way all of the bread can soak. If you do it in pieces like this, you're looking at more of like a French toast, which, while delicious, is not what we are going for. So we're just gonna continue to break this down a little bit more, and then we can start to get working on our custard base. And don't worry about any little pieces that fall off of anywhere, still usable. So we're gonna take our bread, we're gonna cut it in half, our little loaves that we've made, and we're just gonna cut them into small enough pieces so that's why when we make our bread pudding, they're somewhat even. They don't have to be super even. That's the good thing about bread pudding, is you cut it up however you can, however you want to. And from there, you just do the custard base, bake it, and that's what you got. So we're just gonna continue to cut up the bread into small pieces. We have our full loaf of bread is all cut up. Now the good thing about bread pudding is that your pieces don't have to be even. They don't have to make sense with the size and the shaping because it's just gonna absorb the liquid. So usually, bread pudding uses stale bread or bread that's been sort of left out for a few days or bread that you could even dry yourself in the oven. I recently used Italian bread for bread pudding. I don't know if it was the recipe or the bread. It didn't turn out the best. It turned out okay, but I want to try using this kind of a bread, which is somewhat of an egg base with the buttermilk as well. So I want to try with this bread. Even though it's a little softer, it's still kind of fresh from being out of the oven because it was earlier today, but we're going to try it. We're going to see how it goes. If it doesn't turn out well, lesson learned. That's the good part about cooking and baking, is you can experiment and try until you find the recipe and the way that you like it. So here are a list of ingredients that we're going to need. I'm on a bit of a time schedule, so I'm showing it this way instead of my usual display out. So you're feel free to pause it whenever you want to. But this is our list of ingredients that we're going to be using for today's bread pudding. So let's start putting it together. All right. So what we need is 2 cups of granulated sugar. So we're going to take some measuring cups that we used earlier, already washed. We're going to try and get out 2 cups of sugar. If you're a little low on it, you can just get a spoon, put some in there, so we can get our full 2 cups. Try and make it as level as you can get it. We're going to need 5 large eggs. What we're also going to do is we're going to preheat our oven to 350 degrees. So with that same measuring cup, we're going to double check that our eggs are good, that there's no blood, that there's no shell in there as well. Four and 5. And we need 2 cups of milk. So I'm actually using an unsweetened vanilla almond milk. So we're going to do 2 cups of this. You can use the same measuring cup that we used for the sugar and the eggs. It's 1 cup. And that is 2 cups. I'm still actually going to add in the vanilla extract just because it's going to be that little extra boost of flavoring. So let's move some people out of our way. And then we need 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I left it over here. So let's do 2 teaspoons of this. So the teaspoons are the smaller ones, not as big. So we're going to do 2 of these. If you go a little over, it's okay. All right, now let's get our whisk. And we are going to combine all of this together. This will look a little different when you use regular milk because the almond milk has a little bit of that tint from vanilla. So don't panic if mine looks different than yours, because even though it is, it's the exact same mixture. No worries, you're doing it right. Just that mine has that vanilla tint from the almond milk. I definitely suggest a deep bowl for this because the simple fact of the matter being is there's a lot of liquid that ends up in here, and when you're stirring it, it's going to splash around. So a deeper bowl is much better. Something a little higher up. So this is how I'm saying it. It's going to look a little different because mine has more of like a slight brownish coloring from the vanilla in the almond milk. So when you add it, if you don't add the tinted vanilla, it's probably going to look a more yellowish coloring. So you can see though, it's still mixed together, even though you can see the egg bits. It's all mixed together. The sugar has been incorporated with everybody else. So from this point, we're now going to add it to our bread. All right, so now we're going to take our custard mixture. I moved the cube bread into a bigger bowl because this has to absorb through all of that. So what you're gonna do is slowly pour it over everywhere. Try and make sure that every top part of it gets incorporated. So we're just gonna spread that out so everybody gets. Scrape out our bowl. And what you can do at this point with a spatula, slight spoon, is just give it a small toss. So that way, whatever bread didn't get coated underneath, on top, everybody gets. Just do this gently, only because the bread is now wet. So now it's going to be a bit more fragile. So we're just gonna coat that best as you can. Because when it pours into the pan, you can also get some spots, but this should soak up pretty well. And now we're going to leave this for 10 minutes to soak. So while that soaks, we're going to prepare our topping. So we're going to chop up some pecans. It says about a cup's worth. If you go a little over it, that's okay. I like the pecans in here. This is going to be part of the topping. So we're going to put some brown sugar and some butter together with this. And this is going to go on top of our bread pudding and add a little extra bit of flavor. So it doesn't have to be perfect, just whatever you do, watch your fingers. So you can make them as big or as little as you like the chunks. I'm going just for a little bit smaller, so you can do this in the food processor if you prefer. I think you can also get already cut up. So you can do however you want to do it. So we have that. This is about our cup's worth of pecans. We have our butter is softened. So we're going to take our pecans and we're going to add it into there. Try and get all that you can in there. And if you need to, you can move the board a little closer so you get all those pecan pieces in there. And then we need a ½ cup of packed light brown sugar. So we want to make sure that we get a nice tight ½ cup because this brown sugar is infused with molasses, so it's a little bit sweeter. So when it calls for a ½ cup, we want to try and get the exact of a ½ cup. So we have our ½ cup measurement here. I'm going to pour that in. Sometimes you can just open the top of the bag and get a scoop out. But we're going to try it slightly different. So then as you go and you get close to the top, from here what you're going to do is you're going to press it in. This is what it means by the packed light brown sugar. It's really in there. So you get an even ½ cup. We're going to get that going. Now I've already preheated my oven to 350 degrees. We got it nice and flat. In goes our light brown sugar. So now what we're going to do is I have a fork. We don't want to use anything too heavy. We just want to break it all up together and combine the butter, the brown sugar, and all the pecans. Now you could use a different nut if you prefer, but I am using the bread that already has raisins in it. So if you wanted to add raisins, you could. If you did the bread regular and you decide that you want to do for the bread pudding, you want to add it, you can as well. So we're going to make this into a crumble more than anything. Shouldn't be a paste, it should be a crumble. So we're going to keep mixing everybody in till we get to a certain point where we have gotten this. So it's more of a crumble. It's easy to spread out on top. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to use to spread on top of our bread pudding. So I'm going to be using a springform pan. This is another time if you wanted to take a little bit of leftover butter and just grease the bottom and the sides. So make sure, especially when you're using a springform pan, make sure everybody is in the right groove. You don't want this to leak out somewhere because there is going to be some loose custard as well in here. So we're just gonna grab this, some extra butter. We're gonna do up the side a little bit. Make sure everything gets coated. So when we're ready to take this out, it'll pop out nice and evenly and easy. We don't want it to get stuck everywhere. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna coat that nicely. And now, after I wipe my hands, we are going to do our bread pudding into the pan. So it's been about 10 minutes, maybe a little less, that we've let the bread soak. So now we take it off. I don't know if you guys can see, but it is nice and soft. There is going to be some liquid on the bottom. Don't worry about that. That custard is going to get baked and cooked and hold the bread together. So with our same spatula as before, we're going to take this and scoop it out. Like I said, don't worry about any liquid being in there. We want some of that liquid. We want all of that liquid, I should say. And we're just going to distribute it evenly so it all sits nicely in the pan, nice and even. This is where you can push it down. The bread is not going to rise anymore when you put it in the oven. So we're just going to lay it in. And then with our spatula, just going to push it down a little bit to help form it. This is where it also doesn't matter if the bread gets a little more beaten up. That's okay. It's all going to be melded together, hold together, and it's going to come out nice. And at this point, you can just kind of use your hand. It's going to make a lot of squishy noises because it's all soft, wet bread. So we're just going to spread it out evenly. Make sure that nothing is over the edge. All right, we're going to wipe our hands one more time. And then with our crumble, we're going to go in. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to have to get your hands dirty again for this part. Grab some and crumble it on, right on top of your bread pudding. So this is the pecan, light brown sugar, and butter mixture. And that's what happens when you forget to turn your phone off. So we can just kind of get to all the corners and distribute everything out and around. This part you don't push on anything. You just let it crumble where it falls. That's it. You can help by pushing it around, but don't press on the crust at all that we made. The crumble, I should say. Don't press on that part. So I want to make sure every bit of this gets in. And now it's topped. Now we are going to take our bread pudding and put it in the oven for 35 to 45 minutes at 350 degrees or until it is set. So just set an alarm, check on it, and make sure. If it's still a little too wobbly on the center and you can see it kind of jiggle around too much, leave it in there a little bit longer. But don't forget, we're probably going to let this cool inside of the pan as well, so that way it will continue to cook after. So the directions for the sauce are here. I'm not going to be doing the sauce for this because I'm trying to make this as low sugar as possible because my parents are diabetic. So I'm trying it differently. So if you guys want to do it with the sauce, let me know how it comes out. I traditionally leave out the brandy only because I usually don't have it and I don't want to spend that much money on such a small bottle for one recipe. So if you guys do it with the sauce, let me know how it turns out. If you leave out the brandy or if you add it, let me know if that changes it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. It's still in the oven right now, but just for you guys to know that I'm not doing the sauce for this recipe. So if you want to, this is the sauce recipe that you can put together. and I'll even scroll up so you guys can see for the sauce what are the amounts of ingredients that are to be added. So if you guys want to try it for yourself, you know, please try it. Let me know how it turns out. If you change anything, add anything, maybe you don't use the brandy and you use something else, let me know how that turns out, and I hope you guys enjoy trying your hand out at making bread pudding. So as most of you know, I have an electric oven and stove. So my cooking time might be a little different, but the way that I've always done it is I use the lowest amount of time first that they recommend to cook it till. So I'll leave it in the oven for 35 minutes, and then from there, between that 35 to 45 minute range, I can do it in like 5-minute increments and see if that makes it better. I think sometimes it depends on the pan, because I'm using a spring form and it's a little bit thicker. It might change the cooking time, but I'm going to leave it in that spring form pan even for serving, so then that way when you cut into it, you kind of get like little slices of bread pudding instead, or you can still scoop it out however you want to do it. That's the good thing about bread pudding, is you can kind of serve it however you want to, but that also, like I said, for the sauce, you guys can make it. I'm not making it this time around. But let me know how it comes out with the sauce on it. Some people prefer to do it where you serve it and then you pour the sauce on it, or you can do the sauce over the top of it and save some for each slice. Can also serve it with Cool Whip if you want, fresh fruit. There's a lot of different ways to serve it. So, you know, just experiment with that part. And yeah, when it comes to the cooking time, just depending on what kind of stove or way that you're cooking, it might change it, the time frame, and the same thing with the depth of the pan. It recommends for a 9 by 13, so those are usually kind of like the baking sheets type pans that you'll see. So yeah, you can do that one, and then I'm using the spring form, so I'll let you know how that changes it. Fresh out of the oven, it looks amazing. It's not wobbly. It's slightly browned on top from the butter. I did it for 35 minutes. I'm gonna leave it in that tin to finish cooking. I don't want it to be too overcooked, and since there's so much heat in there, that's actually gonna keep it cooking. So, there you guys have it. Bread pudding made with Irish soda bread with a pecan, brown sugar, and butter topping. We didn't do the sauce this time, but give it a try. You can try it with the sauce, without the sauce, and see how you guys prefer it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy and try your hand out at making some new recipes.